Hey everybody, I'm so glad to be back. I'm so glad to see you all here. This is fantastic. As you know, there's been a couple of weeks where I've unfortunately been off the air, but now that we're back and even better on an even better platform, I'm so excited to be with you again. This is so fantastic to see everybody here. Mickey, Pat, and everybody else. This is fantastic. So I love seeing you. And for those of you that are new and don't know me, I'm Chris Lippincott, and I'm a psychic medium. And what I really help people do is to lean into their own psychic powers, their innate spirituality, and reach out and expand their connection with spirit. And I also help mediums and psychics as well expand their connection to really develop themselves and really improve themselves. And so it's great discussing spirituality. It's great discussing all of our connections with spirit because we all can do it, as you know that. We each have our own individual journeys. We each have our individual path. But what I love to do is to help everybody accelerate that path, accelerate that journey, really get into their connections so that we can all learn, how to communicate, how to understand what spirit is trying to relay to everybody. Because you know that spirit is trying to connect with us. It's us humans here in the dense physical world that we're the ones that have to open up. So we're the ones that have to connect. So what I love doing is just talking about that. And today, one of the things I wanted to quickly discuss was some of the fundamental elements that will give you a good indication that perhaps your individual abilities, your individual psychic abilities may actually be closer to the surface than you realize. Because if you think about it, everybody's got psychic abilities. They're innate. We've all got our sixth sense. We've all got that sort of gut intuition. We all have that sense of, hey, I guess really should be doing that. And oftentimes it really turns out to be true. We all have that. And it's a question of how close to the surface is that? Are we able to really harness that capability? Because if you think about it, animals still have that ability and use it all the time because they don't speak the way we do. Before we had verbal communication, that was how we communicated. So prehistoric man had in the back of their brain all of the psychic senses built in because that's how we detected things, right? We still have that, but because our forebrain has grown so large, we've basically put the back into the back brain all of our old psychic senses, and they've become dormant. So modern man has really become more reliant on his physical senses, the five physical senses that we all know and love and we use. So we really don't touch the psychic senses. But it's the psychic senses that when you begin to work with them and you begin to think about them, you really begin to understand what's there and how we can use it. And for example, we're all working with, our gut instinct. Our gut instinct is very reliable. The thing that always shocks me, for example, is I'll go out in the morning and I'll have this sudden feeling, boy, I should be taking my umbrella. Do I listen? No. I come back and the next thing I know, I'm soaking wet because it's pouring rain. Or things like that. Or sometimes you'll be walking around and you'll have this strange smell of pipe tobacco and there's nobody around. Why are you smelling pipe tobacco? It's your psychic sense picking up that, somebody's around with that communication, giving you that capability to let you know that they're there with that smell. So there are all sorts of examples like that. But today I just want to go through the top 10 signs that maybe you're a psychic. Maybe these abilities are closer to the surface than you really think or realize. So one of the things that I love to look at is, we were just talking about this, the gut feelings, right? If you've got really strong gut feelings, and it's quite frequent, that's really your clairsentience talking. It's a non-physical ability, but it's something that's giving you the clear feelings, and it's offering guidance. It's giving you a sense of a message of some kind. There are hunches. Why is it a gut instinct that we're working with? Because clairsentience is working in the solar plexus. That's really where it's coming from. That's the clair that's located in the solar plexus chakra, and that's really sort of the power that we all have. That's really where it's the soul is centered, if you look at it on the human body. So think about strong gut instinct. If you often are getting a connection with strong gut instinct, then that's going to be something that gives you a very good indication that you should be following it. And I'll give you one example for yourself. For the next 7 days, whenever you get a strong hunch, a strong gut instinct, follow it, because the number of times we all ignore our instinct is countless, right? So I challenge you to follow your instinct for the next 7-10 days and see what happens. You got to pay attention, because the voice inside your head that's telling you to, suggesting, it's never going to demand, it's suggesting, and it's a really, really quiet voice, right? It's really so quiet that it's kind of tough to listen to, because our monkey mind's always chattering away. But if you listen to that quiet little voice in the back of your head that's suggesting you do something for a good reason, follow it. Do that for the next 7 to 10 days. See what your instinct is telling you, and you'll probably be quite surprised. The second thing that you should be thinking about is your emotions. If you've got strong emotions, if you're feeling strong emotions, for example, you ever absorbed the emotions of other people? That's an indication that you've got some very strong clair empathy. And it's the strong emotions that you're working with. Some people have an indication where they'll be standing in a group of people and they'll just be absorbing everybody's emotions. And sometimes people who have strong clair empathy can't put up the barriers between themselves and everybody else's emotions, so they just become a sponge. So after a while, you'll also get a sense that perhaps you'll get a call and you'll start crying, but you start crying and you don't know why. You get a call, pick up the phone, and suddenly you realize that a relative of yours is calling you, and she's crying because a dear relative of everybody's has just passed away. You were picking up on that person's emotions. So if you ever have these strong emotions that are there and you're not quite sure why they're there, that's a clear indication. Maybe sometimes, you have gotten these emotions that you've absorbed from other people and it's left you feeling kind of drained. Maybe you've been in an elevator, maybe you've been in a subway, and suddenly you're just flooded with all these emotions. You don't know where it's coming from or why you're having them. It's, again, the clair empathy, and it's the psychic nature within yourself that you're absorbing, right? So this is something that is really something to work about. And another indicator would be if you've sort of got like a radar for somebody who's lying. It's the old BS detector, right? If you can look through somebody and nobody can pass a lie over on you because you can see through that person, then that means you're a great reader of people. You know what they're actually thinking. You know what they're actually doing. Nobody can pull the wool over your eyes. That's another indication that you're actually that your psychic abilities are actually quite strong. You're perhaps a great people person. Maybe you're also in a profession currently that requires you to be a good people person. Maybe you're in, a counseling profession, or you're in some profession where you're able to use your ability to read other people really well. And quite often, it's these kind of professions where you have people from that profession moving over to, say, mediumship or the psychic profession, because they're able to work with their abilities to know and feel the ability of other people. So that's something about it. Another indication is, do you have feelings about places? Maybe you go into a room, right? And all of a sudden you got the heebie-jeebies and you're like, oh boy, the energy in this room is just like, it just doesn't feel right. And you're just like, oh, I got to get out of this room. The energy is just like all bad. No, it's no, out, I'm gone. And then you leave the room and you're like, oh, okay, I'm better. I feel better. Or same thing with like some space outside. Maybe you suddenly enter a space and you're like, oh boy, I can just feel the negative energy. Or conversely, it could be positive energy as well. But you really feel the intense energy of some space when you enter some space, some location, indoors or outdoors. And then suddenly, when you leave that space, you feel so much more relieved. So you can really notice the difference between when you're in and when you're out. It's something where you just really wanted, in many cases, you really wanted to leave. That's an indication that you have your abilities, quite up to the surface, and it's something that you should be really trying to work with. If you're starting to get some of these abilities, you're starting to realize, hey, I do have these abilities. That's a great example of you being able to say, I think I should be working with this more, because too many people have all these abilities, have all these natural skill sets, but they just kind of let them lie there. They'll have an experience and then they'll say, oh, all right, that's nice. And then they'll kind of go on their merry way, and they just really don't pay attention to the fact that these experiences that they're having are so strong and what they truly mean. And another thing that you might look, another indication, is that maybe you're having really intense visions, whether they're while you're awake, or perhaps you're having incredible visions or dreams. Maybe they're premonitions. Maybe some of these dreams or some of these visions that you're having, you wind up coming true, and you're like, oh no, that's just too weird. I don't want to pay attention to that. But if it's really intense and really detailed, and something that leaves, let's say it's a dream, for example, really intense, really detailed, and it gives you something where you have an intense memory of that dream that's foreshadowing something, and you feel it's something to do with the future, but you're not quite sure what, then that's an indication that you're getting some sense, you're getting some read of what might be happening in the future. Happens to a lot of people. And the dream or the vision doesn't have to be long at all. It can be actually quite short. You can have the same kind of vision or whatever in alone, or maybe it's you're in a crowd. Maybe it's in a familiar place. Maybe it's in an unfamiliar place. It doesn't really matter. And in a similar fashion, it's these dreams that are so intense, and sometimes they're almost too real to think that they are real. But in fact, they are. And I guess I'd say, related to that, it's very similar to a dream visitation. Now, a dream visitation is only different in the sense that a dream visitation is from a loved one who has passed on and coming to visit you. But in both cases, these dreams are very intense, very detailed, and give you a series of memories that you remember for a long time. It's not like one of these vague dreams where you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I remember having a dream. It was kind of about this, and I don't really remember what it's about. Because that's the way most dreams are, right? Most dreams are just kind of, gosh, I don't really remember what it was, right? But that's what a dream visitation is. It's like really intense, and you really remember it. So that's something that's amazing. And likewise, in this whole concept of the ability to see, dreams or see some kind of vision, it's also the ability to see spirits, whether they're full-bodied spirits or whether they're just full light orbs. It's your ability to be able to see it. Many cases, it's just with the third eye. In other words, having a vision with your mind. In some rare cases, you'll actually have an objective vision, which means you're actually seeing it with your physical eyes. So that's really the difference between clairvoyance is objective clairvoyance with your eyes and subjective clairvoyance with your mind. So that's really kind of the difference. But again, if you're getting some of these things, start to pay attention, start working with them, start to think, okay, I can, I have these, I should really start to work with them. Because if you start to realize you've got them, it's like a muscle. That's really all it is. It's like a muscle. You go to the gym, you start working out a certain muscle, and over time, that muscle gets stronger and stronger and stronger. If you don't work out the muscle, it's not going to grow. It's the same thing with any ability, regardless of what the ability is. It could be a muscle, it could be a skill set, it could be mediumship, psychic abilities, whatever. It's all the same thing. You got to practice. That's what it's about. And I'd say another indication of you being, having a psychic ability that's way up here would be, deja vu. Now, deja vu, in case most people wouldn't know what deja vu is, but just in case you don't, it's basically the feeling that you've been someplace previously. You've been, somewhere else, and you think, okay, I'm pretty sure that I've had that experience before, or I've been here before. Now, many scientists say the difference between deja vu and anything else is just that they're saying it's the one half of the brain having a delay sending its electrical signals to the other half of the brain. So when the other half of the brain picks up the electrical signals that the one half received, you think you just saw something and you already had that experience. That happens in some cases. In many cases, that happens when, you're kind of sleepy. And you'll have this feeling of, whoa, I just felt like I was just there. But in many cases, it goes far beyond that, because it goes into extreme detail to the point where you may have an extreme detail and you say, I know I was here, and in fact I can really list out all the details of where things are, why they're there, who's there, and I can tell you the people who are there, I can tell you the objects that are there. In many cases that might be reliving a past life, and there are so many cases of past life cases that have been driven up by University of Virginia, University of North Carolina. They've got hundreds of thousands of documented cases. So we know this kind of stuff happens. We know it's been studied, and it's just a great thing. But just begin to become aware, if you've got deja vu, that it's not just the typical, okay, I'm just going to dismiss it. There may be something there, and you may actually be experiencing this, that you may be, displaying, very super psychic senses that are kind of bubbling up to the surface again. Another indication might be, perhaps you're getting overwhelmed. Maybe you're getting easily overstimulated. And I would say this kind of ties back to one of the earlier things we were talking about, where we were talking about your clairempathy. If you easily get stimulated, that means that your emotions are getting riled up, where you're taking on everybody else's emotions. And again, it's a clairempathy, and you're taking on other people's emotions, you're absorbing them like a sponge. And again, you're feeling drained, but it's also the stimulation. Many times you're feeling overwhelmed, feeling overstimulated. So it's a case of you feeling to the point where you no longer have control over your emotions. Many people think, oh yeah, that's just kind of me, that's normal, whatever. But it's a clear indication that your clairempathy is firing strong. And clairempathy, of course, is another indication of psychic ability, also mediumship ability. Something, again, you just got to work on. You just got to kind of practice it. And you practice it, the more you do that, the better, right? One thing that's kind of near and dear to my heart is childhood fears, right? Because if you've had intense childhood fears that when you look back on, you're like, well, I don't understand why I had this childhood fear of X, right? That's something that quite often is letting you know that something happened. Maybe you had an interaction with spirit that as a child, you thought it was like the boogeyman, or you thought it was a monster coming to take you away, or for some reason you had this odd experience or series of experiences that as an adult, you blocked it out of your mind because you put it in your subconscious. But as you grow older, maybe you've got a fear of the dark, and you don't know why. And that's why I say it's near and dear to my heart, because that's exactly what happened to me. When I was young, I had all these experiences, scared the daylights out of me. Spirit was trying to reach me, and I was scared, thinking it was a boogeyman. I was like, no. Of course, what I do, I repressed it, put it in the back of my mind, never remembered it, but I always had a lingering fear of the dark as an adult. And I never knew why. And only later did it finally kind of bubble to the surface. We started putting everything together, and sure enough, that's exactly what it was. So pay attention. If you have some unusual, feelings where you were a child and you had these intense experiences, look back at it as something that you have been contacted, and there's a reason. So, try to drum up your old experiences. That may actually help you. Another obvious one that a lot of people are aware of is quite often psychic ability, mediumship ability is included, runs in the family, whether that's DNA or whether that's the fact that the family just talks about it freely. Because unfortunately, in our society, what we wind up doing is, if we're not sure of something, we put it off to the side, and we're like, no, that's not right. If it doesn't fit in this nice, neat little box, then we're not going to talk about it. We got to keep up with the Joneses or the Smiths or whatever. We got to look normal. We got to, be the normal family. But if you're a family that talks about everything openly, and you're encouraging, things to happen openly, then what winds up happening is that the person who's learning it and going through it and experiencing it as a child starts realizing, okay, this is something I can work with. This is not unusual. Let me explore this concept. Because too many parents, repress these things as unusual. So that's why I say it's kind of running in the family, whether other people in the family have had the same experiences, same abilities, and encourage it, or they freely talk about it. And that's kind of like why it's a family type thing. So pay attention to that. That's really something where you begin to realize that this is an ability that you can expand upon and really work your muscles, right? And I'd say lastly, something to think about is, if you've got that concept or that feeling that there's something else beyond this physical world, and we just don't know what it is, but you're sure it's there. You've got that that quote unquote feeling that you just can't put into words. You can't put it into form, but there's something there, or you start realizing there's got to be more than this physical thing. We just don't turn into, dust and blow away. If you start thinking like that and you notice that's you, then that means that there's something trying to get in contact with you, letting you know that sure enough, there is more than just a physical existence. I know that when I was, starting to develop into, my mediumship for a good 20, 25 years, Spirit just kept on putting all these books in front of me. And for, a good quarter of a century, I was just reading, I had this voracious appetite for everything metaphysical. And I didn't know why, but I knew there was something beyond, if you will, right? I didn't have a clue why I had this fascination with it. But over time, it started to, become very apparent that this voracious appetite had a reason, right? So if you've got something like that, take that into consideration. So those are really sort of the main concepts, the main ideas that would be primary signs that perhaps you've got your psychic abilities at the top of your brain. It's at the surface. It's not just lying way back here. It's actually closer to the surface, and you realize it's just lying dormant. Now what you got to do is activate it. Now what you got to do is practice it. And that's why I love teaching people how to work with their natural abilities, the abilities that are already there just at the surface that need to be worked on. It's kind of like being sort of like a teacher, like a trainer, and helping people to understand what they need to do, or how they can grow what they already have. And it's great. I mean, naturally, just connecting the spirit, but also seeing how they can really work with that. So that's close to my heart. So that was really what I wanted to talk about today. So what I'd love to do is open it up to you. If you've got questions of me, I'd love to answer your questions. I'd love to interact with you, because this is supposed to be an interactive conversation, broadcast, and I really want to hear from you. I'd love to answer your questions. So if you've got questions, type them in the chat. Let me know what you've got. So I already see some questions are here. So let's see. Pat's here saying, trying to spot someone telling. Yep. Okay. So it sounds like Pat's mentioning they've got a great ability to spot somebody lying at a distance. And that's one of the signs that I was talking about, is the ability to say, hey, I can tell that you're lying. I know that you're not telling the truth, right? I can tell where your natural inclination is. And that's again, a great ability to have, because you've got that ability to read people. You've got that ability to know what it is like, what it's, again, it's an energy, the ability to read somebody's energy. And that's what all this is, really. It's reading energy, it's feeling energy, because we are all energy, as you know that. And it's the ability to detect what kind of energy the other person is working with. Are they working with virtuous energy? Are they working with positive energy? Are they working more negative energy? Are they working with lies? Or uncertain energy? What energy is there that they're working with? And if you can detect and feel and sense, but you're not quite sure why, that is a psychic sense. So yeah, so Pat, that's definitely something else. So if you've got other questions, I'd love to hear them. And also another thing, if these are the kind of topics that you like to hear, I'm doing this every week. I put out videos quite a lot. Subscribe on that little red button down below the screen, and you'll see a subscribe button. So click on that subscribe button, and when you do that, you'll see all of my videos, all my posts as they get put up there. So definitely press the subscribe button. And also another thing to do is, you can always send me a chat, send me any kind of message that you like. Let me know what type of topics that you're interested in, because I love to hear topics you are interested in, what topics that you want to hear about, and that's really something that I'm always passionate about, is trying to answer your questions. So with that, what I want to do is just thank you. If you don't have any more questions, it's basically at the top of the hour, which is just perfect. My 30 minutes, which is what I like to keep my broadcast to, is coming to a close. So again, I thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was something that really educated you. I hope this is something that kind of gave you some form of insight into your own abilities, into the abilities of others, and the reality of the energy that's out there. If you begin to realize that we are energy and there's energy everywhere, then that's really something that's tremendous. And I see Karen has joined us, saying, finally got on the chat session. Hi, Karen. So glad to see you. This is wonderful. It is a little bit challenging, I've got to admit, when you're first trying to work with the chat, work with some of the different sections. If you're not working with it, if you're not used to it. But for those of you who are joining kind of recently in the last few minutes, we've been talking about the different signs that we can really focus on that are giving you a good indication that you've got your psychic abilities at the top of your brain, top of your capability. So it is 6 o'clock. It is the 30-minute mark, and I really wanted to thank you all for being here. And again, if you like what we were talking about, that little red button below the screen, hit the subscribe button, and you'll get all of my my posts. So with that, I thank you, and this is Chris Lippincott, and I wanted to thank you for being here, and I will see you next week. So have a great week until then. So bye-bye for now.